Hi everyone, welcome to the Artefacto YouTube channel. My name is Andy Evansen. I'm one of the instructors on the Artefacto online program, and I've been painting watercolors for about 30 years. So this video, I'm going to share some important tips on how to get started. Okay, so now, and again, we've got all the darks on here, obviously, and there are a lot of darks on here, but I'm going to talk my way through the big connected middle value shape. When looking at this value study here now, most of what we've got going on here on this side of the paper is going to be middle value and dark quite a bit. As I squint, there might be a couple little highlights on like the mop handle, the frame of the bike. Like I said, maybe a little bit on the plants and stuff too, but this is going to be a big connected shape with some blue grays, just kind of like what I had just done on for the lighter wash, just darker versions of them. Some cerulean blue, cobalt blue, neutral tint, brown, and I'm going to connect all the way through down here, and I'm going to paint around a couple little highlights. The inner part of the wheel of the bicycle. We're going to paint that middle value reflection and do some negative painting like Hannah just talked about. Painting light shape. They're creating light shapes by painting darker shapes around them. That's something, again, the plan of a value study helps you to visualize and see that and prepare for it. Unless you want to use gouache, which I do for some little highlights that I might have painted through. I don't have any issues using gouache, but in general, I like to paint around my shapes and leave the painting as transparent as possible. And that's very unique to watercolor, obviously, because it's the only transparent medium. Every other medium, gouache, acrylic, oil, pencil, charcoal, you don't paint around your lights. You're able to actually come in and put your lights on with paint or whatever medium you're using. But in watercolor, we create our lights not by painting the lights, but by painting darker shapes around them. So that's a big part of this big, large connected middle value shape too. So I'm going to go ahead and mix some of those puddles on my palette. For the value study, I would have just mixed one big puddle of middle value gray, but now I'm going to mix a variety of colors here, get them out on my palette. Cobalt blue, cerulean blue, some neutral tint. And let's just have some fun with it, okay? I don't want it to be, doesn't have to be photorealistic. I want to have it a nice big colorful shape. We're going to get some burnt sienna with raw sienna in here for the warmer areas, maybe mix some rose or alizarin crimson into it too. Over here, that burnt sienna and neutral tint. Okay, so just kind of getting your palette ready like this for this initial big shape, having all those fluid colors ready to go. Anything else that I might need, there's a little bit of some, again, kind of a weird greenish color and down below and some of those reflections. So I'm going to mix a little bit of that over here as well. Some raw sienna with cobalt blue. All right. So now my palette has got some nice big puddles of color that I can just kind of rinse my brush off and dive in and keep rinsing it and grabbing another color and paint this nice and big and fluid. Okay, so I'm going to try and talk my way through this a little bit. I'm going to zoom up just a little bit more so you can see both of these here. Reference photograph and the value study. Okay, so I'm going to start up in this corner with my big connected shape. What's up here? We've got a little bit of some blues going into like some Payne's gray kind of stuff. So I'm just going to start up here in this corner and start painting that shape. Reload my brush often. I want to maintain a nice, fresh, wet edge to this shape. Going to rinse my brush, dry it off. I've been teaching watercolor to beginners and advanced students alike, and have seen them go on to really grow, and some of them have gotten into big shows and won awards themselves. That's really gratifying for me. So I know what I teach is very helpful. So with that being said, I invite you to stay tuned and sign up to my watercolor marathon using the link in the video description. In the watercolor marathon, I'm going to talk about all sorts of things from basic to advanced techniques, how to tackle trees, skies, water, lots of different aspects of the landscape. and it'll be very helpful for you. Grab some of the brownish color, grab that wet edge and start painting a little bit of that down here. I'm going to soften that color just a little bit as it comes to the bottom of this. I just rinsed my brush and I'm going to create a little bit of that shape right there. Load up my brush again, keep painting down here. So I'm creating this shape. There's a little bit of a highlight down here where I'm going to come close to that broom handle. So that's where I'm going to negatively paint around that a little bit here, just leaving a couple little spots behind. Don't want to get too carried away with how many highlights I leave up there. Rinse that off, grab some of that brownish color again, and start painting a little bit of the shadow area on that mop handle. I've got that all drawn out so I know where that is coming up this direction. Keep looking at my value study as much as I can. The small little shape. Now I want to grab some of that green. Rinse my brush off, dry it off on the sponge, grab some greens, and start integrating a little bit of that plant, the middle value of that plant in here. Connect, connect, connect. That's what this is all about. So I'm painting this little area now. And again, I'm not just grabbing a color and painting all the green areas. I keep working from a wet edge here. I'm gonna leave a couple of those highlights behind. There's some green over there too. But this is how you take advantage of, again, what makes watercolor so beautiful and unique. All these lost edges, the fluidity of it. Okay, so I've got some of these green areas in here. Now as I come down in here, I've got some more of the rusty browns and things. Now the rest of that bike frame is going to be defined by the even darker shapes that are going to come later. So now I'm starting to put a little bit deeper rusty brown color in this area. Rinse my brush off, dry it off, grab some of this, touch that bead. And again, we've got a couple little highlights on that bicycle frame that I can leave behind. But as I come down here, most of this is going to be quite a bit darker in that shadow area. And again, I'll say this is not an easy subject by any stretch of the imagination. That's why I've talked about this. If you're trying to paint along and you're frustrated, don't worry about it. Okay, this was a purposely chosen subject to talk about the importance of not getting too bogged down and trying to paint everything that you see. You can't do it. And by the way, when I'm painting this with my eyes. I have my cheater glasses on, but I'm squinting still too, to try and block out some of the noise and the detail, to make sure that I'm just focusing on as much as I can the large shapes in here. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in on that just a little bit so you can see this is the reason I do that. Or look at all those areas where one color is bleeding into the next. Again, that's what makes watercolor so beautiful. More detail can come later with the darks. Right now, I'm trying to paint big shapes. If you want to paint loosely, you've got to paint big shapes. All right, down into this area. Again, there's going to be a little bit of a highlight on the side of that round thing. As I'm coming down here, I want to paint around a little bit of a highlight on the bicycle frame there. Start merging this over with some of these shadow shapes on that pot. Painting this little shadow area here. So I'm following my value study plan as I go. A little bit bluer than what I got there. So I'm painting this little cast shadow on the side of that pot up above here, indicating some details. Remember what I said before, I didn't take this reference photograph because of all this junk back there. The cat coming out from behind the wall, the general feeling of the bicycle leaning in here, all those are what I'm trying to stay focused on while I'm doing this. Back into this little area, before I lose it too much, I wanted to leave a little bit more of a highlight down here. Okay, got the edge of the bicycle frame there. painting this deeper grayish brown in the middle there and leaving some of those little highlights behind again for the bicycle frame. Not too much. Everything there is going to be left as is. I wanted a little bit of a highlight on the tire. But connecting, all these shapes as I'm working my way across. Connecting. Now I'm into this little pot here, a little bit deeper brown. Adding some more raw sienna, burnt sienna, neutral tint to it coming across here. Get that little pot and the table that it's sitting on starting to join together. So now I'm onto this area. Following my plan, always. And again, the hard part is there's going to be some, darks on here at the end also that I'm not going to be able to get to. But that's going to help to define things even more. Okay, so there's the edge of that little pot, leaving some of those small highlights behind again. That's going to connect right up into that side of that pole I had over here. Okay, so that's going to come up here into this area. Maybe you can paint around a little bit of a highlight on that plant. That's going to connect over here through that shadow underneath the mop handle into that area. Changing the color to a little bit more of a blue on that mop handle. Metallic color. Get that shape coming down. The edge of that is a little bit more of a weird brownish green. Get some of that over here. Painting this weird shape. Paint around the highlight on the mop handle. Or again, I don't know what that is, if it's a mop handle or what, but I just keep calling it that for consistency's sake. Okay, up above that, over here, connecting with the other side of that little pole. I'm going to turn my paper sideways and just kind of get that up like that. That side stroke, it's a little bit easier to make those strokes sideways. Off in a little bit, and then we've got that little gap in the wall here. I'm going to keep that background area really nice and simple if possible. One of the things that I should not have done on my value study is add some darks up here. I tried to kind of lift them out a little bit. There's enough going on here. I don't want any more attention back up there. So now I'm going to negatively paint around the light side of that pole a bit and come down here with a bit of a shadow area. Try and keep things nice and connected. It's kind of just a bluish color back here. You can leave a couple little highlights out, I guess, but for the most part, just trying to block out detail back there in the distance. There's a couple of trucks parked back there. I can always put some tires or something on it later if I wanted to show us a vehicle, but that's going to continue on down here. Now this is going to be much darker later, so I'm not going to worry too much about finishing all of that, but I'm still going to kind of carry that down here for now, just to connect things down to my cat. Okay, I'm going to get back down to this area, but you can see, look how similar these two shapes are for now. Okay, I'm leaving the same big highlighted areas behind. That first wash was just kind of very pale tinting some of these little areas that weren't actually just white paper. They needed some color to it. There's that neat cast shadow from the mop handle down here that I didn't quite get yet. I want that down here going to the plant. Okay, side of that table has some smaller things too we can get to, but now I'm going to come back down into this area and get that big kind of a reflection coming down. That's where it's going to go from kind of greens and browns back and forth. So it's a little bit more of a greenish color down in here. Leaving that little highlight behind for where the bicycle spokes are. All right, now I'm gonna keep, another fun thing to do is just to kind of get a couple of colors on your brush at the same time and start painting with them. So I'm gonna get some brown, some burnt sienna, some of that green, some of the blues with the cerulean blue and the cobalt blue. And I'm just gonna load up, load up, load up, and come to my painting and start putting those colors on there and let them mix and merge on the paper, okay? Paint around that little bicycle frame a little bit better there. The middle value, so I'm back into this area. Load up, load up, load up, come back, start painting that middle value. Reflection again, I'm gonna paint around that top of that rock a bit. One more time. But by loading up your brush and just letting it all mix and merge on the paper becomes very natural, okay? I'm not really controlling what goes where. I just wanted some color variety in there. So it's kind of fun to just do that once in a while too. Load up your brush with color, come down here and paint. And let Mother Nature take her course. The rest of that bicycle frame, I wanted a little bit of a highlight down there. More green reflection up here. And that's coming up here, merging with the rest of that bicycle frame. Big connected, colorful shape, right? And then the details later on, bicycle tire, the dark on the cat, some little shapes up in there to define things. But right now I'm trying to paint big, bold, and beautiful. The 3 Bs. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit deeper and bluer with the reflection down here, coming over to my cat. Start working on that area. Still trying to keep glancing back and forth, value study, reference photograph, keep myself on target. Put a little bit of lavender in here too. Trying to create some little color variety down in that bottom area. Don't want to get too crazy with it, but also don't want it to be too boring. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of the highlights, the blues that I want to leave behind. I'm going to paint around that patch of the concrete going over here, but this is going to connect right over again to my cat. And the leg of the cat is going to be darker, so I can paint right into it. Don't have to worry about painting around it. Clear that up. So now let's go ahead and kind of finish off some of this reflection down here. Leaving some of the highlights behind, like I did before on the value study. Got the reflection of the bicycle tire, the reflection of the mop handle and stuff. Make sure when you're painting reflections that they're underneath what's causing the reflection, okay? Might seem basic, but I'd be surprised how often people don't do that. And that's going to connect to the reflection of the cat too. Okay, now for the value study plan, I wanted to highlight the light on that cat's back. So I'm going to put that little bit of a deeper blue wet area on the road up above here, that middle value, and kind of carry that over as a reflection. And that's going to help to define. Now the cat's face is darker, so I can kind of don't have to worry about painting right around that. But I'm going to try and paint around the top of that cat with this puddle and leave a couple of little highlights behind on his ear and on his back. So I'm going to use that slightly deeper bluish color on the road to define the highlight on the cat's back and make sure that that's really popping out. So that's one of the stars of the show. And then that little, some of that wetness is back here too, going off across the street. Connecting, again, that's going to be darker later, so I'm not worried about it. Following my plan. And this is part of that planning, that value study. I wasn't just worried about the cat. I'm like, how am I going to show the light on that cat's back? I need that middle value above it. And then later on, when I put the dark on, that's really going to pop it too. Now, some of that cat shadow is going to be connected to that blue I just painted. So I need to get a deeper brown on my brush. little bit stronger here. Oh, too much red. There we go. And I'm gonna touch what I just painted there, just like I did here. No need to paint around it, and I'm gonna start painting the shadow area of that cat right away. And that's gonna be connected to what I just put on my paper, the blues. Let the cat, that goes back to what I was talking about with the figures earlier, making connections, making sure they're integrated. Okay, don't just outline the cat and leave it. That cat is touching some of these areas that are a little bit darker here. So now it's just another shape in with everything else. And yes, I'm gonna be coming back and painting those darks stronger later, but the point is I'm not painting around the cat at this point in time. It's part of that scene, okay? But just like I did up here, connecting it, a little bit more of the reflection, some more blues and stuff down below here. A bit more coming through. And then we're gonna have the reflection of that cat coming down also, just like I did down there. I'm gonna simplify some of that area down a bit more. Just so much more fun to paint. I mean, a complicated scene like this still took a good amount of time, but there's no way I would have done this without doing this first. I would have just, you're painting all these little separate aspects. You've got to see in your mind's eye, clarify it through the values, what's light, what's darker, paint those, I'm connecting all the shapes that are of similar value. The light wash was covering the whole paper. Okay, now I'm still painting a big shape, but I'm painting around those lighter areas. But still just connecting, trying to simplify. Now I'm gonna go in and paint the reflection of the cat. Make sure I've got that middle value down below here. A little bit stronger. And that's what I was saying before, when I painted that blue, the reflection of the cat was gonna be deeper, so I didn't have to worry about painting around it. Now I can paint the reflection of the cat and make sure that that's kind of tied into everything else. So again, I know is this easy? No, not by a long shot. This is not an easy thing to do. It's a different way of thinking. And that's why in this course, we tried to kind of break things down and not just worry about finished paintings. You've got to worry about trying to learn some of these foundational things first before you go in and try and do finished paintings all the time. And it's kind of sad that I think too many people do that. The only time they pull out their brushes is when they're trying to do a complete finished painting. And that's a struggle, okay? Trying to make everything happen the way you want it to is things are gonna go wrong. Even with the best amount of planning, things are gonna go wrong. Okay, that's my big connected middle value wash. For the most part, there are a few little smaller things I can do here now, but the guts of this are in, following my plan of attack, the value study. There's that little pipe coming down. All right, very fun. And again, if I zoom in on this finished stage, you can see, look at all those fun color transitions that I've got going on inside that shape. That's the goal. And it's already starting to take form in the viewer's mind's eye, right? Starting to figure out what everything is on here, even without the dark details. Anna, do I have time to put a couple darks in before we switch over?
It's completely up to you. If you have the time, then I have the time.
Yeah, yep, let me put a few of these darks on now.
Wonderful.
Everybody's attention. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to a little smaller brush.
We have a question if your paper is still damp or if it generally is dry.
No, but it was pretty dry before I did this. If it was still wet, I wouldn't be getting some of these hard edges that I'm leaving behind. Okay, so
Thank you.
that's why we were talking about the course. It allowed the paper to dry a bit. So, yeah. Okay, so I won't put all the darks in, but I just want to show you, some of the darks that we have going on in here and how things will become even more defined and refined by putting those in. So I'm going to kind of deal with the main important shapes, the pot and the bicycle and the cat and things like that, and get those working here. Maybe because I started up here, maybe I'll give those other areas just a minute to dry by working on some of those other dark areas in the background. But again, now I'm going to start creating some depth. So I can, that little pole that was back here is defined. I've got all that middle value now, but now I need that darker shape in the middle of all that. And I'll paint around that pole, leaving the mop handle behind again too. So now this is my darks. This is the last stage. So I created my lights by painting middle values around them. Now I'm creating some of my lighter middle values by painting darks around them. Okay, so it's all, again, that whole process of trying to plan out ahead of time, right from that first wash. What do I need in this little area that, an hour from now when I paint around this, what color is going to be left behind, what tone, what value? It's important to make some of those decisions early on, because again, watercolor is not going to let you adjust too many things later on. Okay, this is going to come right down to the top of that little mop handle again there to help show that highlight. I'm going to softly bring this down just a little bit. Don't want that standing out too much up there. Some of these details up above. Okay, so I've got that little dark area to help pop that out. Coming into some of the darks around the bicycle frame in that background area. Carry that dark shape down through here. And I am getting a little bit of furring going on because of my middle value wash is not dry yet. But that's okay. I don't mind that. I'd rather have things be a little bit softer than too tight. So just go ahead and let that happen. A little bit more of that bicycle frame now coming down, that little dark shape, just like I did on there. Having a plan of attack is so important. I'm gonna paint around some of the bicycle frame up there. Paint around that lighter part of the frame down here. I'm painting this little dark shape right now around the bike frame. Painting below that, that's going to come right up to my tire here. Painting around another part of the bicycle frame. Right up to the top of that thing. So I'm painting this area right now. Right up to the edge of that wheel. Underneath here. The edge of that wheel again. Bicycle frame. Get the tire on. Okay, so this will probably fuzz a little bit too, because everything isn't dry, but I just wanted you to see some of what happens at the end. And why you don't have to sweat some of the small things too early on in the process. Way too early, we're worried if our cat looks like a cat, or our people look like people, or our bicycle looks like a bike. Okay, there's a time and a place for some of these things. You just have to trust that process of building your paintings up. That light to dark. Okay, now I've got it's a little bit angular and stuff, but I'm trying to not stick my hand in wet paint, so I can't really balance it too well. The edge of that pot is a little bit darker, the side of that pot. I'm going to go deeper brown there. Give that a bit more of a shadow. Light side, shadow side. So many of these things are just, like I said, just painting a light side, shadow side, give it form. And the shadow sides are typically where your bigger connections are going to come into play with that nice big connected middle value wash. But look how many fun little things are starting to come alive now with the darks, now that I'm putting those in. Okay, I want to start connecting the darker areas of that reflection down here. I'm using a synthetic brush. I also have a paper towel in my hand. If you noticed, I'm wiping my hand. I'm getting it all over myself, but wiping my brush off a little bit. I want to control the amount of moisture in my brush a little bit more at this stage because everything isn't dry yet, not quite dry. So if I use a little bit thicker paint with a synthetic brush, I can put it in here and I'm okay with some of the fuzzing, but if I come in here with way too much water, it's going to fuzz way too much. So I'm trying to get some of these shapes in nice and quickly. That's the little darker shadow reflection of the bicycle going down here. A little bit of a shadow in this area underneath that round thing. Probably need to darken up that round thing a little bit more later, but there's my bicycle. Here's the spokes. Okay, I want to touch up my cat a little bit for you here too, but maybe before I do that, let's give that a little second to dry. I'll put some of the darks down here like I did. Looks like it's got some blues and stuff in it. Cobalt blue, ultramarine blue. A little bit of crimson. Get a few more of these nice deeper reflections. And it's okay if these fuzz a little bit, that's fine because I kind of like it's water, so I don't want it to be too hard edged. So that's why, again, I was staying away from the cat just a little bit longer to give that a little bit more time to dry and doing things that I don't care too much if they're going to fuzz more. A lot of times I want shadows and reflections to be a little bit softer, not as defined. So it's a good opportunity to work a little bit more wet into wet. I'm going to create the reflection of the bicycle tire right here, darken that up just a little bit more again. Some other little shadows and reflections coming down underneath the rocks, that kind of stuff. Just trying to keep it nice and fresh and loose, right? If you want to loosen up, gotta throw caution to the wind once in a while. There's that dark sweeping shape connecting to my cat. Okay, I'm gonna put a couple darks on the face of my cat, and then we'll take it back to Hannah and let her do her thing. Right, that ear is a little bit darker. The tone on the face, that's a little too dark. Don't want to get too black with it. And again, that's why I have a paper towel in my hand. If it's too dark, I just wipe my brush off on the paper towel. Now I can get a little bit more tone on my cat. And this is why I wasn't worried about painting around my cat's face earlier. Okay, it's going to be a darker shape on top. Don't paint around shapes that are going to be darker later. Paint right through them. Creeping out from behind there. And again, I know it can be frustrating because a lot of people struggle with drawing, and I like to draw. And this at this stage, I'm kind of drawing with a brush, right? I'm painting smaller shapes, so it can look really easy. But I'm trying to stress the point of simplifying and not putting too much detail on and just painting the large shapes. Okay, and that's what I'm doing on this cat. Just the light side, shadow side on that cat. Connecting that down below into the reflection of him. Darkening that up too. And that's going to connect to that big wall that he's creeping out from. Now I can darken up that wall. Switch to a little bigger brush. That's a bigger shape. Some raw sienna, some burnt sienna, some neutral tint. wall blue. Just paint that nice big shadowy wall that he's creeping out from. A little bit of detail there. I'm going to turn my paper sideways again to do this. It's a little easier for me to make that kind of a brush stroke side to side than up and down. But yeah, now that whole, pretty much that whole wall can just be nice, strong, vertical shape here. Big brush, big puddle, big shape. Use the right tool for the project. Big shape. I don't want to paint that with a tiny little brush. Right side up again. Now I've got that nice deep dark wall to add some drama for the whole thing. Okay, so yes, there are a few other little smaller things that I need to tackle in here. Obviously, those darks. I don't want to get probably got a little carried away with the value study, just talking about all the details and things that you want to put in there. So I want to try and keep this even more simplified than I did on the value study, but some of the darks on the bicycle frame now can come back in, deepen that up. I can darken up a little bit on the edge of that mop. Okay, but you get the idea how important it is. And this is a very complicated scene, right? And it hasn't even been an hour and a half, and I've managed to get in most of the big things. You know, you've got the viewer convinced at this stage of the painting what it is that they're looking at. And if you want to paint, you know, that word impressionism get bandied about and tossed around, but you just want to paint the impression of that scene, right? I don't want to paint it so that it's exactly like the photograph. I want to let the viewer's imagination kind of fill in some of the blanks. And hopefully when you look at a lot of the paintings that I post online and things, they're convincing. You know what it is that you're looking at, but if you kind of zoom in on it and really look, there's a lot of the details that you're seeing in there are actually being filled in by your mind's eye. I'm not painting them, I'm painting the big shapes. So you just assume that some of these things are what they are without me even having to paint them. So if you concentrate on those big shapes, get those working, let the viewer's brain kind of fill in the rest. That's important. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to sign up for our YouTube channel. We've helped all levels of artists learn the skills of drawing and painting, and you can follow that link via the video description to register for my marathon. I hope to see you there.